Silence is the most underestimated weapon a man can hold in today's world. We live in an age where men are told to constantly express themselves, to pour their feelings out endlessly, to explain, to justify, to plead. Yet here is the uncomfortable truth. The longer you stay silent, the deeper a woman feels it. And this truth unsettles people because it goes against everything modern culture tries to teach men about relationships. Think about it. From the moment you were young, you were probably told that if you like a woman, you should talk more, compliment her more, prove yourself more. You were conditioned to believe that women will appreciate you if you become the man who always responds, who always explains, who always makes himself available. But the harsh reality is this: words can quickly lose their value. Constant availability becomes predictable, and predictability to the human mind, especially the feminine mind, breeds boredom. This is where silence enters the picture. Not silence as in childish ignoring, not silence as in sulking. I mean the kind of silence that carries strength, that communicates control, and that forces space into the interaction. That kind of silence can be felt far deeper than any carefully chosen words could ever reach. Here's the controversy. Society has sold men the illusion that women want endless talking, constant reassurance, and unbroken attention. But if you've ever paid attention, if you've ever observed female psychology closely, you'll notice something fascinating. It is not your words that echo in her mind when you're absent. It is your silence. She doesn't replay the compliments. She replays the moments when you didn't respond, when you weren't so available, when she had to wonder what you were thinking. That tension, that uncertainty, that space, those are the moments that grow in her mind like wildfire. Now, some men will instantly resist this truth. They'll say, but I don't want to play games. I don't want to ignore her. And that's exactly the point. This is not about manipulation. It's about understanding human nature. In Stoicism, one of the highest forms of strength is restraint. A man who cannot hold his tongue, who cannot control his impulses to respond, who cannot sit comfortably with silence, he is not in control of himself. And when a man is not in control of himself, he loses respect, not only in the eyes of women, but in the eyes of everyone. The longer you stay silent, the deeper she feels it, because silence forces her to face herself. When you stop rushing to explain yourself, to over-justify, to pour endless energy into making her comfortable, she begins to reflect. She starts wondering why. She feels the absence of noise, and in that absence, she projects her own thoughts, her own doubts, her own curiosity. That is the power of silence. It lets the other person's mind do the work for you. Let me give you an example. Imagine a man and a woman have a disagreement. The average man, desperate to keep her happy, will rush to defend himself, explain himself, and fill every second with words. He thinks that by over-communicating, he is saving the relationship. But what actually happens? His words become background noise, predictable and forgettable. Meanwhile, another man, the one with Stoic discipline, says very little. He makes his point clearly, then falls silent. That silence echoes. It unsettles. It lingers in her thoughts long after the argument ends. And the truth is, she feels it more deeply than the man who drowned her with explanations. Here's where the controversy sharpens. Women, whether they admit it openly or not, are far more impacted by a man's absence of response than by his flood of attention. Your silence communicates something primal. It says, you are not desperate. It says, you are not controlled by her emotions. It says, you are capable of walking away. And in female psychology, that triggers both respect and curiosity. This doesn't mean you should be cold or distant for no reason. It means you must learn the discipline of silence. You must know when to hold back, when to stop talking, when to let your presence or your lack of presence speak louder than words. This is why Stoic philosophy is so valuable for men. It teaches that control of the self is the highest form of power. And when you master silence, you master yourself. Think of it like this. When a man talks too much, he spends his power. When a man knows how to stay silent, he gathers power. Women feel it because it is rare. Most men can't do it. Most men crumble under the discomfort of silence. They rush to break it, to explain, to apologize, to chase. But the man who remains still, composed, and unshaken, he stands apart. and that presence is unforgettable. So if you've ever wondered why your words don't stick, why your efforts don't seem to have the impact you expect, it's because you're giving too much of what is abundant, noise. What you withhold, what you restrain, what you refuse to give away so easily, that is what becomes valuable, and that is what women feel the deepest. This video will break down exactly why silence is so powerful in female psychology, how it aligns with Stoic philosophy, and how you can use it, not as a game, but as a principle, to become stronger, more respected, and more in control of yourself. But it begins here, with the uncomfortable, controversial truth: the longer you stay silent, the deeper she feels it. Men today are trapped by one of the biggest lies ever sold: the idea that silence equals weakness. That if you don't keep explaining yourself, if you don't keep proving yourself, you'll lose her respect. But here's the raw truth: it's the opposite. Silence, when used with discipline, creates respect. And respect is the foundation of attraction. Let's be honest, most men can't stand silence. They panic when there's a pause in the conversation. They rush to fill every second with words, hoping to keep her entertained, hoping to hold her attention. But in reality, the man who fears silence is the man who reveals insecurity. And insecurity is something people, especially women, can sense instantly. Here's where Stoicism gives us clarity. The Stoics taught that mastery over yourself is the highest form of power. A man who cannot sit in silence without breaking down is not in control of himself. He is a slave to his own anxiety. On the other hand, a man who can hold silence comfortably communicates that he is unshaken, that he does not need constant validation, and that his worth doesn't depend on her reaction. That alone commands respect. Now let's push into controversy. Many men believe that by talking more, they're building connection. They think endless conversation will keep her close. But in female psychology, it doesn't work that way. A woman doesn't respect the man who always jumps to prove himself. She respects the man who can say less but mean more. She respects the man who doesn't spill his every thought because it shows discipline. It shows that he values his words, and therefore she should value them too. Think about leaders you admire. Do they ramble? Do they fill the air with unnecessary chatter? Number. They speak with purpose, then they stop. Their silence after a statement carries weight. That pause forces people to reflect. The same principle applies in relationships. When you are silent, your presence becomes stronger. Your words carry more power because they are rare. Here's a situation you may have seen play out. A man and a woman get into a heated disagreement. The insecure man immediately launches into a storm of words. He explains, defends, repeats himself, even begs. He thinks that the more he talks, the more she will understand him. But what happens? She tunes him out. His words become noise. Now imagine the opposite. Another man makes his point calmly and firmly, then he stops. He doesn't argue endlessly. He doesn't chase validation. He lets his silence do the heavy lifting. That silence, uncomfortable as it may be for her in the moment, lingers far longer than any speech. Later, when she's alone, she replays it. She thinks about it. She feels it. That's the difference between respect earned and respect lost. Here's the uncomfortable part. Silence exposes strength. Most people cannot handle it. Women feel it more deeply because they are used to men breaking first. They are used to men rushing to prove themselves, rushing to fill the space. But when you don't, when you hold that silence without flinching, you show something rare, unshakable self-control, and that is magnetic. Many men confuse silence with being cold or distant. That's not what this is. Silence isn't about punishing her. It's not about acting like a robot. It's about understanding timing. It's about knowing when speaking adds value and when silence says more than words ever could. It's about being deliberate. And that's what earns respect. In fact, silence is often the strongest response you can give. When someone disrespects you, silence communicates that you don't even consider the attack worthy of your energy. When someone tries to drag you into pointless drama, silence communicates that you will not lower yourself to that level. And when a woman tests your strength, silence communicates that you are not easily shaken. Picture this. A man sits across from a woman during a tense conversation. She challenges him, pushes his buttons, even accuses him unfairly. The average man would rush to defend himself, raise his voice, or try to argue his way into being understood. But this man doesn't. He listens. He responds briefly, calmly, then he lets the silence settle. She waits for him to break it, but he doesn't. That silence begins to weigh on her. It makes her reflect. It makes her question herself, and most importantly, it makes her respect him, because he didn't lose control. That's the essence of this principle. Silence creates respect, and respect is the foundation of attraction. Without respect, there is nothing. A woman might laugh with you, spend time with you, even flirt with you. But if she doesn't respect you, the connection will eventually collapse. Respect is not earned through endless talking. Respect is earned through composure, through restraint, through the ability to stay unmoved when most men would crack. This is why silence is not weakness, it's strength. Weakness is being unable to hold back your emotions, your words, your reactions. Strength is knowing you could speak but choosing not to. Strength is knowing you don't need to fight for every little thing. Strength is letting your presence, not your noise, do the talking. So here's the truth most men don't want to hear. If you want her to respect you, you must master silence. Not fake silence, not sulking, not ignoring, true silence, controlled, disciplined, intentional. Because when you do, you step into a kind of power that most men will never touch. And once you hold that power, she will feel it, and she will respect it. One of the fastest ways men destroy attraction is by talking too much. It sounds simple, but it's one of the most overlooked truths in relationships. Most men believe that if they keep explaining themselves, keep complimenting her, keep sharing everything on their mind, she'll value them more. But the reality is the opposite. Too many words slowly kill attraction. Let's strip this down to something every man can relate to. Think back to a time when you really liked someone. Chances are you found yourself over-explaining, over-talking, maybe even texting paragraphs at a time just to keep the conversation going. At first, you thought you were building connection, but deep down, didn't you also feel drained? Didn't you sense that the more you said, the less impact your words carried? That's because words are like currency. The more you spend them carelessly, the less they're worth. A man who always has something to say, who never lets silence breathe, makes his words cheap. On the other hand, the man who knows when to hold back, when to keep things short, when to let his presence speak louder than his voice, that man's words hit harder. They have weight because they are not thrown around carelessly. Women are not immune to this. They notice patterns. When a man constantly talks, constantly explains, constantly reassures, his words lose meaning. She stops listening closely because she knows he will always keep talking. There's no mystery, no pause, no reason for her to lean in. Attraction thrives on tension, on curiosity, on space, and too many words destroy all of that. Here's a reality most men don't want to face. If you're always talking, always texting, always filling the silence, it's not because she needs it, it's because you need it. It's because you're afraid of losing her interest, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of not being enough. But that fear bleeds through every word. And when she feels that fear, respect starts to fade. Think about your own life. Do you remember every long speech someone gave you? Or do you remember the few words that were spoken at the right moment? The words that cut deep because they were rare? It's the same in relationships. The less you waste words, the more powerful the ones you do use become. Here's where the controversy comes in. Modern culture tells men that communication is everything. And yes, communication matters. But there's a difference between clarity and overexposure. Saying what needs to be said clearly and confidently is strength. Drowning her in words because you fear silence is weakness. The line is thin, but the difference is massive. The hard truth is this: women don't feel attraction toward men who constantly flood them with noise. They feel attraction toward men who show restraint, men who don't need to fill every silence, men who can hold themselves back, men whose words feel valuable because they are not always available. That's the psychology most men never learn, and it costs them dearly. You've probably seen this in your own relationships or even in friendships. The people who talk the most, who over-explain themselves constantly, are rarely the ones we admire. The ones we admire are usually the ones who say less, but when they do speak, it matters. Why? Because restraint signals strength. And in human nature, strength is always respected. So when you're tempted to keep talking, when you feel the urge to fill the space with endless words, pause. Ask yourself, am I speaking because this needs to be said? Or am I speaking because I'm afraid of silence? Most men will find the second answer is the truth. And that truth explains why their relationships slowly lose fire. Attraction doesn't die because you didn't say enough. It dies because you said too much. It dies because your words lost their scarcity. It dies because instead of letting her feel the weight of your silence, you covered it up with chatter. That's not strength. That's insecurity in disguise. Here's the lesson. Too many words kill attraction, but the right amount of silence builds it. If you want to stand out, if you want to be respected, if you want her to actually feel your presence, stop over-talking. Start valuing your words the same way you'd value money. Don't spend them carelessly, because once you do, you'll notice something powerful. The less you speak, the more she listens. The less you explain, the more she wonders. And the less you chase with words, the more she feels your silence. That's not manipulation, that's discipline. That's Stoicism in practice. And it's the very thing most men today are missing. Most men never understand this. The more space you give, the more she feels the pull. The less you chase, the more she leans in. This isn't about games, it's about psychology. Human beings value what isn't always available. And when it comes to women, space makes her chase. Here's the problem with most men. They're terrified of space. They confuse closeness with control. They think if they're not texting constantly, not checking in every hour, not glued to her side, she'll forget about them. But what actually happens is the opposite. The more you hover, the more you smother. The more you smother, the faster attraction dies. Let's be real here. Many men act like they're afraid to breathe without her permission. They drop their entire schedule, their goals, their purpose, just to be available at a moment's notice. And then they wonder why she stops respecting them. Brothers, wake up. How can she respect you if you don't respect yourself? How can she chase you if you never create the space for her to move toward you? Space isn't about neglect, it's about balance. It's about having a life outside of her, your work, your health, your mission, your friendships. When you fill your own life with purpose, you automatically create space. And that space does something powerful in female psychology. It makes her feel your absence. It makes her notice the gap. It makes her think about you without you even saying a word. But here's where most men fail. They think more attention equals more attraction. They smother her with constant words, constant presence, constant reassurance. But what happens when something is always available? It loses value. If she knows she can have your attention at any moment, without effort, without question, she stops valuing it. She stops chasing it. Now think about the opposite. Think about when you hold back a little. You don't always answer right away. You don't always rearrange your life for her. You don't stop your own goals just to keep her entertained. That space makes her curious. It makes her feel something she can't ignore. The tension of wondering. And tension is fuel for attraction. Here's the criticism men need to hear. Too many of you are living like puppies, always eager, always ready to please, always wagging your tails for attention. And then you cry when she loses interest. The problem isn't her. The problem is you gave her no space to miss you, no reason to value you, no challenge to overcome. You must understand this. Women respect men who are grounded in their own lives. A man who creates space shows he has discipline. He shows he doesn't need constant validation. He shows he is not afraid of losing her. That strength is what makes her chase, not your desperate attempts to close the gap. And here's the reality. If you can't give space, you don't actually have control of yourself. You're operating from fear, not strength. Fear of silence, fear of absence, fear of being forgotten. But the paradox is this. When you stop fearing space and start embracing it, that's when she feels you most. Men need to wake up to this truth. Stop throwing your whole life away just to orbit around her. Stop killing your own purpose just to keep her comfortable. Stop being afraid that a little distance will make her leave. If a little space makes her walk away, she was never really with you in the first place. But if a little space makes her chase harder, then you know she feels your presence even more when you're not around. This is why Stoicism matters. It teaches you to hold back your impulses, to not act out of fear, to not need constant reassurance. It teaches you that your highest power lies in control of yourself. And one of the most powerful ways you show that control is by creating space. So here's the uncomfortable but liberating truth. If you want her to chase, stop chasing. If you want her to feel your presence, give her your absence sometimes. If you want respect, stop acting like you have nothing else in your life but her. Because the moment you step into your own mission, the moment you embrace silence and space, the dynamic shifts. Suddenly, she's not the one being pursued, you are. Space makes her chase. And the sooner men wake up to this, the sooner they'll stop losing respect, stop losing attraction, and finally start living like the men they're supposed to be. We've broken down 3 powerful truths. Silence creates respect, too many words kill attraction, and space makes her chase. These are not tricks, not games, not manipulations. They are principles rooted in psychology and discipline. But now, let's end this with something that will shake some of you to your core. Here's the controversial statement. If you cannot master silence, if you cannot create space, if you cannot control your words, you will always be at the mercy of women. Think about how heavy that is. If you always react, always explain, always chase, then you're not in control. You're not leading your own life, you're following hers. And here's the reality most men don't want to face. Attraction without respect is worthless. If she doesn't respect you, nothing else matters. Now, some of you might be uncomfortable hearing this. You might even be offended. But that's the point. Growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. Growth happens when you face the truth you've been avoiding. And the truth is, most men today are living like background noise, constantly talking, constantly chasing, constantly giving themselves away. And then they wonder why they're ignored, why they're left behind, why their words carry no weight. Respect doesn't come from noise. Respect comes from restraint. Respect comes from being able to sit in silence without breaking, from being able to let her feel your absence without begging, from being able to speak less so your words matter more. And here's what makes this so controversial. Women will never tell you this directly. They won't sit you down and say, talk less. Give me space. Make me respect you number. They'll just feel it. They'll feel when you have control, and they'll feel when you don't. So if you want to stand out as a man today, stop chasing approval. Stop fearing silence. Stop over-explaining yourself like a boy desperate for attention. Start holding your ground. Start valuing your time. Start creating space. Because space isn't emptiness. It's gravity. It pulls her towards you. And here's the kicker. When you finally understand this, when you finally live it, you'll notice something powerful. You won't even have to try to make her chase. You won't have to beg for respect. It will happen naturally because your silence, your space, and your restraint will speak louder than your words ever could. This is where I want to connect with you directly. Think about your own experiences. Have you ever noticed how talking too much killed the vibe? Have you ever noticed how giving too much of yourself made her lose interest? Or have you noticed the opposite? How the moment you pulled back, the moment you stopped explaining, the moment you created space, suddenly she was the one reaching out more, feeling your absence more deeply? I want you to reflect on this, not just as something you heard in a video, but as something you've lived. Because I know many of you have seen this play out, but maybe you didn't have the words for it until now. Drop your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Tell me about a time when silence or space shifted the entire dynamic for you. Tell me about when you realized that too many words were actually pushing her away. I'll be reading through them, and I'll reach out and connect with some of you directly, because this isn't just about theory, it's about real life. And remember, the real challenge begins after this video ends. You can nod along here, you can agree in your head, but if you go back to over-talking, over-explaining, and over-chasing, nothing will change. Discipline is what separates men who talk about respect from men who actually earn it. So let me leave you with this. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not weakness. Silence is power. And the longer you stay silent, the deeper she feels it. Now the question is, Will you be the man who panics and breaks under silence? Or will you be the man who embraces it, owns it, and earns the respect that most men will never touch? The choice is yours. Comment your thoughts, share your experiences, and let's continue this conversation together.